Hey everybody, it's Gene Marks, and welcome back again to another episode of BizBooks, where I speak to some really smart authors of really great business books. And today, I've got another super smart author, Emily Morgan, who wrote "Let It Go: How to Finally Master Delegation and Scale Freedom Across Your Organization." The book can be purchased on Amazon. So info.delegatesolutions.com. That'll get you to the main page where you can see the Let It Go book, and or letitgodelegatebook.com, and or amazon.com, and just type in Let It Go. That'll definitely get you there, and you'll see some money out of that. So that's good. So Emily, thanks again for joining. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, like why write this book, and what's your background?
Yes, so I'm in Philly, and I've spent my career doing administrative related work and delegation related work. So when I first started my career about 25 years ago, I was working at University of Pennsylvania, and I was an executive assistant to some big deal people at the engineering school.
Right.
And that's really where I first learned about this concept of delegation. And then after I left there, I started my company, and we provided executive support fractionally to entrepreneurial leaders. So for a while there, I was acting as a virtual assistant to a bunch of different entrepreneurs. And then I got really entrepreneurial and really sort of took my business to the next level. So now I have about 50 employees. Everyone works from home all around the US, and we work with entrepreneurial leaders, US and Canada, helping them figure out what and how to delegate, and then providing a support team to help them clear their plate.
That's great. So are you performing, and first of all, what is the name of your company?
Delegate Solutions.
Delegate Solutions. And are you performing the actual tasks that you're delegating, or is it just a consulting firm? Like how would you rate, like say I've got 10 employees. We're based in Ballackinwood, by the way. So
cool.
Yeah. So, if we were to hire you guys, like what kind of stuff would you do for my business as a small business?
Yeah. So the output of what we do is task driven. So everyone that we work with, it looks different, but what makes us different is we take a really consultative approach to delegation, because so many people don't delegate because they don't know what to let go of. They don't know how to do it. And so we bring a system and a process to systematically pull those things off your plate. So the number one thing that we usually take over is like scheduling, and then inbox, personal tasks, and then anything from like research to building process to managing projects to signing your kids up for soccer.
Right. Makes
all the
sense.
things that take up our time.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess this book itself is really, after the years that you've been doing this, you're putting it all down on paper, basically, right? Like this is sort of the manual to follow. That's what I took away from this. Does that make sense?
That was my intention. It was like, let's just get it all in one place and get it into a format that people can digest and then implement.
Good. All right. That's great. Okay. So who's Tom? Why was he so involved in this book?
So Tom was a compilation of lots of different entrepreneurs that we've supported. And I really wanted to include like a fable type illustration in the story to make in the book to make it more relatable. So you can see, where someone started, why they struggled with delegation, things that had absolutely nothing to do with delegation, and then how they were able to transform their time and their team using these strategies.
Makes sense. Yeah, it was a good example. Tom appears throughout the book to sort of reinforce some of the concepts that you're going through. And Emily, who's the audience for this book? I mean, you work with entrepreneurs and business owners, obviously. Is that your audience, or is it more expanded than that?
Yeah, our focus is on entrepreneurs, but to me, these concepts of delegation transcend any demographic. I mean, you can be a stay-at-home mom and apply these same principles,
Sure.
As a chef in a kitchen or an entrepreneur running a company.
Yeah, I agree. Delegation is something that impacts all of us, and some people are much better at it than others. So, all right, let's dig into this. You've broken out the book by, you talk about mindset, you talk about techniques, you talk about executing, a process or a plan for delegating stuff. In the mindset section, you talk about the feeling wheel of adjectives. Can you explain to us what that is?
Yeah, so the feelings wheel just helps us put words to how we're feeling. And it's really just there as a resource. But the first third of the book is, I think, the most transformational part, because it's really where we dig into why we don't want to let go.
Right.
And I really think that one of the big things is we don't know what we want to spend our time on, or we've lost touch with what that is, or we have a bigger vision and it scares us. So there's many reasons that we don't even start the delegation process. So that part of the book is a deep dive into some deep stuff within yourself around letting go.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about understanding your most impactful contribution. Is that because people that delegate work, they understand what they could be doing if they were given the time to be doing it, so that they should be not wasting their time doing other stuff that's taken away from their most impactful type of contribution to the organization or their family? Am I explaining that right?
Yeah, I believe we're all here to make an impact in different ways. And when we are clear on what that is, that's when we should start to delegate. I think what we see a lot of people do is just like throw this, throw that at people, try and clear your plate. You're not really following a process to set anyone up for success.
Mm.
The things that you're clearing off your plate, you're just refilling that time with other work that doesn't really move the needle or increase the impact that you're here to make. So I always want us to start with, what are we here to do? What do we want to be spending our time on? And then from there, look at how to use delegation to get there.
Yeah, it's such, you always hear the phrase that of, do what you do best and delegate the rest, and I could not agree with you more about doing that. I just see too many people, I come across, I'm a CPA, if you haven't figured it out by this look here. And, I can't tell you how many, clients that we have that, still do their own payroll, for example, stuff like that. You think like that is, you're spending all these hours a week doing something that's not even in your wheelhouse. You know what I mean? It's just because you're trying to save a few bucks when you could be making so much more money focusing on your business, or growing it or selling it or talking to customers and letting somebody delegate the payroll work to somebody else. You know what I mean?
That was like the first thing I got rid of 15 years ago when I started my business, was invoicing and bookkeeping. I did hang on to payroll because it was like a little bit gratifying to write the checks and like know that I was like creating jobs.
I get that.
But
It's funny you talk about like gratifying. Like there are, we do want to delegate and be fully, worthwhile and all. There are some things like, like when I lived, when we had a house. We now live in the city, but we had a house. Like, I could hire a landscaper to mow our lawn every week, but there was something just satisfying just doing it. Do you know what I mean? There is something to be said for that.
And there's tremendous value in that. I think you just have to find the balance of like, am I like holding myself back because, I'm comfortable here, or I am like really scared of trying to go after this big thing this idea that I have. So it's definitely a balance. I mean, I'm not saying like delegate every single piece of your life. I think that that's not the right way to think about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. There are some even, manual or menial tasks that are satisfying to do and therapeutic, so there's, we shouldn't be delegating absolutely everything, but, some people don't delegate well. People that, I'm sure many of your clients, because you wrote about this, sabotage themselves. Why do people self-sabotage?
So there's so many reasons. There's so much to do with just our backstory of our family heritage, things we went through as children. In the book, when we talk about Tom, he came from a family-owned business, and he was just like sort of there putting out fires, and his dad was in charge. And then suddenly his dad was gone, and he had like never thought about his vision. And he felt in the book, the Fable of Tom, he felt really like anxious that his father was judging him for getting an assistant. He wasn't working as hard as he should. Like that whole mindset of that generation onto our generation is part of it. So
sure.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it builds up, and because of that, it causes people to, limit themselves in what they can be doing. It's like ingrained in what they've learned. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You talk about delegation being a shifting of your energy. You call it an energy management system. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yes, we just got that trademarked actually,
Cool.
because I think it's such an interesting concept. Like I believe that as leaders, the number one thing we have to protect is our energy. And so delegation is what helps us do that. So if we can reframe our thinking from like, I know I need to delegate, I suck at delegating, but I really need to figure this out. And instead just be like, I want to find ways to manage my energy. And this is a tool that helps me do that. That's the concept.
What do you say to people that are, that can accuse people that delegate a lot of just avoiding work? Because that happens.
My partner accuses me of that all the time. He's always like, stop delegating to me.
Yeah, you're delegating. You just don't want to do it, but you're not delegating the responsibility or the outcome, correct?
Typically when you're delegating, you are delegating the outcomes. So you always want to delegate the end result. So what does success look like when this task or project is completed? But I forget what your original question was.
Just like, what do you say to people that say like, hey, you're just avoiding work, by delegating, like you're just lazy, like Emily, like, you're just telling everybody else what to do and you're just sitting there watching Netflix all day. You know what I mean?
Well,
How do you respond to that?
I would probably have the same reaction as most people. I think if you're freeing up the time to move the needle on something, but like freeing up the time to watch Netflix all day, I don't know, in a work setting, that seems a little ridiculous, but
yeah, I just feel like with delegation, a lot of times people are just, they're afraid to give up tasks because they don't think that somebody else can do it as well as them. And then that inhibits them. And that's part of self-sabotaging, isn't it?
100%. I think, that's the fallback reason. That's like the number one reason people don't let go.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like time is finite. We all only have the same amount of time. So if all of that time is being spent doing work that others can do, like what impact are you making?
Right. That makes sense. All right. So you laid the groundwork. You talk about sort of the whole mindset for being a delegator. You have to decide yourself that, what your impactful contribution is so that you're focused on that and really delegating things that are taking you away from that, avoiding the things that cause you to sabotage yourself. You consider delegation as it's if you don't delegate, you're sapping your energy. You're really, it's an energy management system. It's a way to push you to conserve your energy by other people doing tasks that take away energy from you. So you set that mindset up, and then you move towards the techniques of delegation, right? You start with talking about leaders, disciplined leaders, the ones that are really good at this. And you talk about the 3 behaviors of a disciplined leader. They respect systems and assign seats. They're willing to be held accountable, and they temper themselves. So let me just ask you a couple of questions about that. What do you mean by respecting systems and assigning seats?
And assign seats. So respecting systems is, again, my group that I work with is entrepreneurs. And so they're notorious for changing their minds and changing direction and pursuing shiny objects. And it can really take the whole team off course. And I think one of the points that I mentioned in the book that's probably relevant to your question is, like as leaders, we're operating and leading in a space of ideation, and our teams are likely in a state of execution. And so if we're like barfing our ideas all over them, right? All they're hearing is like, oh my God, I got to do this. And there's so much to do to get that done, but I'm already supposed to be working on this. And it creates this friction in your organization of like, they don't understand like how busy we are. And so it can create just this really toxic way of working with your team.
So how do you fix that?
So you commit to following the established plan. So like, for example, at my company, we run on EOS. It's the Entrepreneur's Operating System for the business. And we set our quarterly rocks. We have an annual plan. We have a 3-year plan. We follow what we've committed to. Not to say like we can't adjust, because trust me, for me, it's like a quarter is like a year.
Right.
Like it's like that fast. Right. So I think just agreeing on what the priorities are, seeing them through, completing them each quarter, and just keep moving. And you can certainly introduce other things, but have a plan and be disciplined enough to stick to what you committed to.
What is the freedom analysis exercise? Could you explain that?
Yeah. So in the book, we talk about delegation as a mix of discipline, art, and science.
Right.
And the discipline is sort of what we just talked about. The art is really about what we're going to delegate. So the freedom analysis is an exercise that you can use to examine your time. And we have you put your time into 4 buckets. Things, we always start at the top, things you love doing, most impactful contribution. What do you want to spend your time on? Then we go down to the bottom right and we talk about what are the things you're doing that drain your energy. You don't like them, you're not good at them. Then we move over to the left bottom and we say things you're doing that you're okay at, but you don't really like. And then we move up to the top right and we look at your time of things you're really good at and you like doing, but it's not your most impactful contribution. And that is really the trickiest part of the exercise, because you typically love doing that stuff. Excuse me.
Okay.
So you typically like doing that stuff. And what can happen is you can get really comfortable there. So we recommend if you're looking at that quadrant of the exercise, what are things you're doing up there that are repeating? What are things that you're doing that others could do? And that's really the hardest one to let go of, because sometimes like our self-worth is attached to those types of activities.
What do you do about that? I mean, like, say you see, you do come up with a list of things. These are things that others could be doing, but they're not going to be doing it as well as me, or I just don't trust others to do it. How do you get over that?
So I would first start with, is it repeatable? So are you doing it more than once? And so for me, I found something in that quadrant that was a pretty transformational thing. So for years, I was kicking off our clients. So they would come on board. I would handle the kickoff call, introduce them to the team, help with the delegation strategy, set them on their way. Well, I found I'm doing this over and over again. And I found but I'm like the delegation person, like I need to be doing this. I'm representing the company,
Right.
all the stories we tell ourselves. But I realized actually this is a process. And so I had one of my key team members shadow me. We wrote the process. I shadowed her. We tweaked the process. Now we have 6 or 7 people that launch accounts since then. So I haven't launched an account in years, but that was one of the things that I was personally connected to and thought well, this is what I'm here to do. And actually, no, it was I was there to maybe build it and then kind of release it.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. And I guess everybody has got their levels of trust and their levels of patience and, that they're going to put into doing something like that. To me, I always think to myself, I'm going to delegate this person to work on this client project or deal with this issue. And for me, it's always what's the worst that can happen? How bad can this person fuck this up? You know what I mean? And if it's within this sort of level of I can deal with that, you know what I mean? The chance of the worst case scenario, the chance of the worst case scenario is pretty remote. So it's it's not going to be a disaster, but maybe it won't be as good as me. But how else is that person going to learn so that you can move on and do the stuff that you want to do, right?
Exactly. And they're probably I mean, I don't want to make this broad of an assumption, but in a lot of cases, they're really excited.
Yeah.
Like grow and develop, and like you believing in them or taking a chance on them is, speaks volumes from a leadership standpoint.
And also, the whole theme of delegation now has like a whole new meaning because of COVID and work from home and remote working. And, you've got a whole, a generation of workers, both, millennials and Gen Zers that, they want more independence and flexibility. And to do that, you're going to have to let go if you're a business owner and let them do their thing, and the other thing this ties into, which I also found interesting, is the whole 4-day work week, narrative that's been going on right now. And again, that's also, you're delegating work to your people, and you're saying like, listen, I don't care if you get this done in 4 days or 8 days. If you can get it done in 4 days, go for it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I mean, we have that model at our company. We do flex PTO. So, the team has a utilization goal they have to hit. They have to be responsive during business hours, but we're 100% remote. So you got to go to the doctor, go to your kid's school. Like, we don't care as long as you're meeting like just the foundational, because we've been remote for 15 years. Like we went into the pandemic facing the challenge of it's almost all moms that work for me. So
Yep.
Kids home and all that drama. So that was a whole other thing for us to navigate.
It's funny, yours and my businesses are similar. I mean, even though I'm a CPA, we primarily sell CRM systems, customer relationship management systems. And I said earlier, like we have, we're based in Ballackinwood. We're really not. I have a post office box in Ballackinwood. Right. And, I've got like 10 employees and like a dozen contractors, and everybody is virtual, all over the place, mostly in like the Philly area. And like you, and I think I got you beat by a couple of years. We started doing that in 2005.
Oh, 1 year. Well, I was 7, 2 years.
Yeah, you're in 7. So, so that's a whole other conversation, because it's a cultural issue, and we never see each other face to face, unless we really push it. So there's a lot of challenges for doing that. Back to delegation. You give the 5 golden. I mean, to me, I know you've got a whole section on execution, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I really want to talk about. I found this 5 golden rules of successful delegation like the core of this book. Like this is what you really need to know to be successful at delegating work from a person who is an expert at delegating work. And teaching entrepreneurs how to do it. So I'm gonna give you a couple of these rules, and I want you to expand on them. Okay. One of them, you say, the very first one is about delegating the end result. So expand on that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So we touched on it just a little bit earlier, but it has to do with, what does success look like when this is completed? Because we're all different, and we're all going to tackle problems and projects differently. So rather than sit there and recite, every single thing that you think they need to do, like this has to be true, this has to be true, this has to be true. And then when those things are true, it's completed. And within that framework, we have actually on the website a delegation template that people can download just to be able to fill it in so that it'll help with your success. But sure. Who's doing what by when, how long it should take, what things have to be true when this is done.
I like that. And also, I also like the fact that it's a, and I'm maybe just because I'm so not a micromanager, I'm always like, this is what we need to make sure is being done. However you want to do it, go ahead and do it. You know what I mean? Like, you're a professional, so you can follow these guidelines, but just that's your job to do. I'm jumping around a little bit on these 5 golden rules, but you say to get comfortable with 80%. What does that mean?
So it means a lot of different things. To start with, it means, can someone do this 80% as well as I can? And is that good enough, to your point, right?
Sure.
Another way to think about it is, if I probably only have to do 20% of this project, and the rest 80% of it can be done with someone else, by someone else. So like sort of rethinking one big project into smaller chunks that you have to do. And then, one thing I like to do is have people start things for me. So like if they can get it 80% of the way, I only have to come in and do my last 20%.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's funny. Jeff Bezos has always said famously that at Amazon, they make decisions based on 70% of the information. In other words, like if you've got 70% of the information, that's enough for him to make a decision to go, which is close to 80%. So, it's, I think that's such a, people that resist delegating, and this goes back to self-sabotaging, they want everything to be like 100%. We live in such an imperfect world, that your comment of saying like, listen, if I'm confident this person can do at least 80% of how I would do it, that's a pretty damn good start. Do you know what I mean? That you can build on, right? And that shouldn't stop, it shouldn't hold you back from delegating. Does that make sense?
Exactly. I think like, is it good enough to just get it out there? Is it good enough?
Yeah. It's, and again, listen, I mean, there's so much in our world where having that, is it good enough attitude is the right attitude to have, because you got to move things forward. You got to get stuff done. It's not a great attitude to have, say, like if you're building an airplane.
Or you're a surgeon, like.
There's certain people that I'm like, I want to make sure they do their work 100%.
Exactly. Yes. Please use that with caution.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But then, as I mean, as an engineer, people that you've dealt with in the engineering world, there's certain things that should be done 100%. But I think having that attitude is really important. One other of the 5 golden rules, and by the way, guys, you can read all the 5 golden rules in Emily's book, but one other one I just want you to comment on quickly, Emily, is you said commit to the boring stuff. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. So the boring stuff makes up such a large part of our businesses. And typically as leaders, especially as we start to delegate more and more, it's like we just kind of want to write that off and forget that those things still need to be happening. So it's actually a better way to probably phrase it is like commit to the administrative work that still needs to happen in your company. And as a leader, sort of like make sure that the team doing that work is supported.
All right, that makes sense. Throughout this book, you talk about freedom. I mean, it's you do your freedom analysis exercise, and by delegating, you're freeing up your time to do stuff that is more towards what your impactful contribution should be. It's all it's about that. And you have in the last section of this book, like executing this, a delegate freedom system, to delegate. And you have 5 steps for putting this system together. You focus, you evaluate, you prioritize, you then hand it off, and then you get feedback. And I was wondering, can you run through those 5 steps? Like, just give me an example of if you're going to delegate. Let's talk about Tom. If you're going to delegate something, how would you use those 5 steps in real life?
Yeah, I mean, in all my work with delegation, I found that there really wasn't a system out there that was like simple 5-step system to follow to think about how to do this. So we created it, or I created this. So if you take Tom, like step 1 is focus. So getting back in touch with what he wants to spend his time on. Always starting with that, like almost like a ritual in the beginning of the week or beginning of your morning, whatever. Just getting in touch with that, visualizing it. I do a lot of work with meditation personally. So, finding ways to stay connected to that. So now we have a great frame of mind. Then we go into evaluate. And in evaluate, we're looking back over how we spent our time the last week. We're thinking about things that weren't the best use of our time, sort of using it as a learning exercise for the future. And then we move to prioritize. So in this phase, we're talking about, okay, we know what we want to spend our time on. We know what we shouldn't have been spending our time on. Now let's figure out what is the strategy for the week of our time, and really building towards our goals and priorities, thinking about delegations within some of those, like we were talking about the 80% there. And then we move into the handoff phase, which is how I'm delegating it to my assistant.
Sure.
And following the best practices. And then feedback, I left as its own step, because that's how we continually get better and better and better at this, is like building feedback around delegation into a weekly meeting. So not just you giving feedback, but you asking for feedback. How could I have delegated this better? What can we do better next time?
And all of this kind of builds into creating that sort of culture in your company of delegation. Is that right?
Yeah. So that's the whole end of the book is, okay, now that you've mastered this or you've embraced this mindset, how can you take this mindset and cascade it through the company and through your team? And I believe that if your team is elevated, they're doing work they love, they feel like they're making an impact, they have the freedom to delegate, that's a retention strategy and something we're all trying to figure out right now.
All right, Emily. So you wrote this book. I have to ask, it's a book about delegation. So what did you delegate in the writing of this book?
That's a great question. So a lot. I did not delegate the writing or the sort of concepts, the thought leadership.
Okay.
I did delegate asking my team to collect client stories that I sort of wove together with Tom.
Good.
I delegated the graphics in here and the management of working with our designer. I delegated the process of working with the publisher and all of that. The editing, the copy editing, all of that. So
interesting that you didn't delegate, like you physically wrote this book, like you did not have a ghost writer. Why did you delegate the writing of this? I mean, like, you're not, don't think this right. You're not like a professional writer. It's not like you're, authored a dozen books or whatever. And so no one's saying that like you're an expert, right? You're an expert at what you do. Did you think about maybe bringing on a ghostwriter or was it just something you were always just going to do on your own?
So true story. I went to Penn and I have an English degree.
Okay. Got some writing background. Okay. Now I get it.
I'm always like, how am I ever using my degree? Now I can finally say I used my degree.
That's great. That's great. And, it's funny that you say that because it's, okay, so there you've got some training in writing. So that's, that, and now you were probably looking forward to putting that to use. So that makes sense. Okay. What about like in your life, is there anything in your life that you wish you could delegate, but you can't do it?
Personal life?
Personal, professional.
Oh my God, there's so much I delegate.
Is this your partner? Too much. Too much. But is there anything that you would love to delegate this, but you can't bring yourself to do it?
I really need to reflect on that. I mean, that's a really good question. I delegate so much. I think like one of the things I'm looking at is, speaking. So the travel and all of that required, I'm not like game for that, but there's members of my team who are.
Sure.
So trying to figure out, I do have one team member that teaches our e-course and that's been really successful, but trying to take our content more on the road is something I would love to delegate, is like speakers, or something like that can deliver our content.
See, and for me, it's, I do a bunch of writing in a bunch of different places. And I have a young woman, she's like a junior at Temple, as a journalism student. She helps me with my research and all that. So that's really good, but I can't delegate to her to write my stuff because like my stuff's got to be in my voice. Do you know what I mean? And I wish I could. I really wish I could delegate. Like, here it is, and here's the outline. Go and write that, for me. But I find that something I can't delegate. Final question. Is there anybody in your life, and again, this is anybody you might know personally or professionally, or just, anybody that you would consider to be like a great delegator? Like, man, this person really knows how to, do it. Because I've got somebody in mind, and I'm curious, like a pretty famous person, but I'll tell you mine while you think of yours. Okay. Mine has got to be Elon Musk. And I got to tell you why, because Emily, like this guy, he's got these companies, he's doing SpaceX, he's drilling holes between San Francisco and LA or whatever, like the boring company, you know, for transportation. He's got like the Neuralink, you know, he's got Tesla, you know, with just battery and self-driving cars. Now he's thinking of buying Twitter. And I think to myself, how the fuck does that guy do all of that? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like any one person would take 100 hours a week to like just do one of those companies. And I think to myself, he has got to be the world's greatest delegator. Like he has got to, like, somehow he has hired people, CEOs of these individual companies, so he can be back and, like you said, he can have the freedom, right, to think his big thoughts, to have them being executed. So I was actually thinking of him when I was reading your book, like, man, this guy is, you know, is real. Is there anybody that you can think of? It doesn't have to be on that large a scale, but is also just excellent at just delegating stuff.
Yeah, I would say less about an individual and more just about the concept of people who are really good at it. One of the things that one of my business coaches taught me was a lot of the times, like, your value is in going outside and staring at trees and thinking about shit. So like,
yeah,
I don't know Elon Musk's schedule, but you know, I would think that a lot of what he does is just thinking.
Yeah.
And so it's about valuing, I say this in the book, it's about valuing the thoughts that we have over the tasks that we do, and really shifting our mindset there.
It's so true, because the true leaders of this world, like, you think it would go back to like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and, you know, Warren Buffett, and people that are just, you know, the fact they're big thinkers, and they've had to have had good experience in delegating all the nonsense that we all have to do so that they can spend time thinking about the future. And I think you're absolutely right. That to me is probably one of the most, for a lot of business owners and leaders, their biggest impactful contribution is thinking about their business and where it's going. And like,
being okay with that as a leader, like embracing that and respecting that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing. And sometimes people feel like they have to be busy doing tasks to prove their value. And that's we should be okay, like you said, with you know, not doing tasks all the time and thinking ahead. So the book is called Let It Go: How to Finally Master Delegation and Scale Freedom Across Your Organization. The author, Emily Morgan. Emily, I mean, it was just a great book. It was a great lesson. And somebody who, like myself, as a business owner who's always looking for help in managing my time and being productive and making the most of other people's time, I just found it to be a really good read. So thank you for writing it. I hope you do more of these types of books. It was really helpful. We should also say it's letitgodelegatebook.com or info.delegatesolutions.com. And you can find the book on your site there as well. So again, Emily, thank you so much for joining me. This is a great conversation.
I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Yep. Enjoy, and best of success with the book. Thanks everybody for watching and listening. You have been watching and listening to BizBooks. My name is Gene Marks. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another successful author writing a great business book that I hope will help you in your business. Take care.